Tonight, under the golden glow of the chandeliers, the soft clink of champagne glasses filled the air. My wife's coworker looked me dead in the eye, a mocking smile. "So, what's it like being a loser? Your wife pays all your bills." The table burst into laughter, including her, the woman I've spent 15 years with. I took a slow sip of bourbon, letting the burn sharpen my focus. Then I turned to the CEO, my smile calm, almost polite. "How does it feel, knowing the man you're mocking is the actual owner of the chair you're sitting in?" Silence. The background music seemed to vanish, and in the exact moment his face went pale, I knew, tomorrow, someone would be out of a job, and it sure as hell wouldn't be me. Sometimes one sentence is all it takes to flip the entire board. If you've ever been laughed at, ever been humiliated in a room full of people, stay. Watch what happens when the one being laughed at makes the move no one saw coming. Emily Carter, my wife, Senior Vice President of Sales at Nexora Corporation. Sharp suits, sharper instincts. The kind of woman who walks into a room and everyone takes notice. We met long before the corner office, before the designer handbags and first-class flights. Back then, she was just a hungry young sales rep with a fire in her eyes. I admired that fire. I helped fuel it. Now she's one of the most powerful women in the company. The board listens when she speaks. Clients sign million-dollar contracts just to shake her hand. She thrives in the corporate arena like it's her personal battleground. Me? I'm the opposite of her world. I don't wear a tie unless I have to. I don't play golf to close deals. I've been out of the spotlight for years, by choice. Tonight, though, watching her laugh with those executives, I felt like I wasn't her husband at all, just another prop in the background of her success story. And that was the first crack in a facade I'd kept perfectly intact for 15 years. The Hilton ballroom was a picture of polished excess, crystal chandeliers spilling warm light over linen-draped tables, waiters in black vests weaving between clusters of executives, topping off champagne flutes without breaking stride. Emily fit here, perfectly. Her laugh cut through the room, confident and effortless, as she told some story about landing a big client. She was magnetic. Every eye in that circle locked on her. I stayed at our table nursing my bourbon, pretending to listen to two middle managers talk about quarterly growth projections. I didn't belong in their world. Not anymore. I caught Emily's eye once across the room. She smiled, polite, almost automatic, and went back to her conversation. That's when I felt it. That invisible line between us. The one that had been thin and almost invisible for years. But tonight, under the golden lights and the polite laughter, it felt like a wall. And on the other side of that wall, my wife was living a life where I was just decoration. That's when Ryan Brooks made his entrance. Tall, slick hair, a tailored suit that screamed expensive without saying refined. The kind of guy who laughs a little too loud at his own jokes and slaps backs just a bit too hard. Ryan is one of Emily's favorite colleagues, or so she says. To me, he's always been the type who measures himself by how small he can make the people around him feel. He spotted me from across the room and grinned like he'd just found his evening's entertainment. "Mike, get over here, buddy," he called, raising his glass. Every instinct told me to stay put, but I stood, adjusted my jacket, and crossed the room. Emily slid her arm through mine as I arrived, wearing that perfected corporate wife smile. Ryan smirked, swirling the champagne in his glass. "So tell me," he began, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "what's it like being married to our rising star here? Must be nice having a, shall we say, sugar mama?" The laughter was immediate, sharp, and for the first time I noticed Emily wasn't just tolerating it, she was enjoying it. Ryan leaned in, eyes glassy from whatever he'd been drinking before dinner. "I mean, seriously, Mike, what do you even do all day while Emily's out here crushing it? Play video games? Watch Netflix?" More laughter, louder this time, the kind that turns you into a punchline before you even realize you're the joke. I kept my face neutral, my grip on the bourbon glass steady. This wasn't the first time Ryan had tried to get under my skin, but something about tonight was different. Maybe it was the way Emily's hand stayed on my arm, but her eyes, they were sparkling, like she was in on it. Ryan wasn't done. "What's it like being a loser?" he asked, drawing out the word like it was a fine wine he wanted everyone to savor. "Must be strange having your wife pay all the bills." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were true, they weren't, but because when the laughter erupted, Emily joined in without hesitation. And right then, I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. A part of me that had stayed silent for years began to wake up. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the laughter wash over me. Every chuckle, every smirk, every sideways glance felt like another shove toward a line I'd spent years refusing to cross. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of sacrifices no one in this room knew about. And the one person who did was laughing along with them. I glanced at Emily. No flicker of discomfort. No quick squeeze of my hand to say, "Ignore him. I've got you." Just that polished, practiced smile that had served her so well in boardrooms. Ryan tipped his glass toward me. "Hey, don't take it personally, man. We're just having some fun." I smiled back, slow, deliberate. But it wasn't the polite mask I'd been wearing all night. This one had an edge. I turned my gaze to Arthur Grant, Nexora's CEO, standing just a few feet away, trying to look amused but clearly watching the exchange. "Arthur," I said, my voice calm, steady. "How does it feel knowing the man your team is mocking is the majority owner of this company?" The room went silent, and Arthur's face lost every trace of color. The sound cut out like someone had pulled the plug on the entire ballroom. No clinking glasses, no soft jazz from the speakers. Just a thick, heavy silence hanging in the air. Arthur's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. His eyes flicked to mine, searching for some hint that I was joking. There wasn't one. Emily's arm slipped from mine. I didn't have to look at her to know her expression. Wide-eyed, mouth slightly open, the smile gone. Ryan blinked twice, his smirk collapsing into something closer to confusion. "What?" he muttered, like the word itself could rewind the last 10 seconds. I took a slow breath, savoring the moment. "I own 90% of Nexora," I said clearly, letting each word hit like a hammer. "And Arthur here has known it for 15 years. Someone at the edge of the group gasped. A couple of executives exchanged looks, their corporate poker faces slipping. And in that perfect beat before the whispers began, I realized this was the moment everything changed. For me, for them, for Emily. The first sound to break the silence wasn't a voice. It was the sharp, crystalline crack of Emily's wine glass slipping from her fingers and exploding against the marble floor. Red wine spread across the white linen tablecloth like a slow-moving wound, dripping onto the floor where shards glittered under the chandeliers. No one moved to clean it up. Every pair of eyes was locked on me, or on Arthur, who now looked like he'd just been handed a live grenade. Emily finally found her voice. "Michael, what are you talking about?" Her tone was low, but it carried enough urgency to slice through the thick air. I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I looked around the circle, the same people who'd been laughing at me 30 seconds ago. Now they couldn't meet my gaze. Did I stutter? I asked evenly. Or do I need to repeat myself for the people in the back? Arthur swallowed hard, lowering his glass to the table. The whispering began, small ripples at first, then growing into a low, tense hum that filled the space where their laughter used to be. And I knew I had just turned their party into a reckoning. I let the murmurs build for a few seconds, watching the shift in their faces. The smugness was gone. Now it was calculation, every mind in the circle working overtime to figure out what this meant for them. I leaned back slightly, still holding my glass. "Remember Orion Systems?" I asked, my tone casual, almost conversational. "The little tech startup that merged with Nexora 15 years ago? The one that kept this company from going under?" Arthur's jaw tightened. He knew where this was going. "Yeah," I continued. "That was mine. Still is, actually." A few people looked at Arthur for confirmation. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Emily shook her head slowly, like she could undo my words by sheer disbelief. "That's not possible," she whispered. I met her eyes for the first time since Ryan opened his mouth. "It's not only possible," I said. "It's reality. A reality I've kept quiet for years. Until tonight." And by the way their expressions hardened, I could tell they were starting to realize this wasn't just a revelation. It was a warning. I let the weight of my words settle over them like a storm cloud. No one reached for their drink now. No one dared to laugh. Arthur's face had gone the color of paper. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, staring into his champagne as if the bubbles might offer an escape. Emily was still frozen, her hand hovering uselessly over the table, caught between wanting to speak and not knowing what to say. I set my bourbon down, adjusted my tie, and gave the circle one last slow look. "I think we're done here," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked away. The sound of my footsteps echoed through the ballroom, cutting through the rising hum of whispers and hurried conversations. Behind me, I could hear Arthur trying to calm the group, Emily calling my name, Ryan muttering something defensive. None of it mattered. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't walking out as the quiet, agreeable husband. I was walking out as the man who owned the room, whether they liked it or not. I was halfway to the exit when I heard it, the sharp, rapid click of heels on marble. "Michael! Michael, wait!" Emily's voice cut through the low murmur of the ballroom. I didn't slow down. If anything, my stride lengthened. The lobby was cooler, quieter. The scent of polished wood and hotel coffee replaced the heavy perfume of the party. I shoved my hands into my pockets, eyes fixed on the revolving doors ahead. "Damn it, stop!" Her tone had changed, less polished, more desperate. She caught up just as I reached the doors, grabbing my arm and trying to spin me around. "What the hell do you mean you own the company?" I stayed still for a moment, feeling the weight of her hand through my jacket sleeve. Then I turned to face her. Her makeup was flawless, but her eyes, they betrayed her. Confusion, disbelief, maybe even fear. "You really don't know, do you?" I said softly. "Don't play games with me, Michael," she snapped. "Explain, now." And for the first time tonight I realized she wasn't ready for the answer. I held her gaze, letting the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it. Then I said, "You honestly have no clue who you married." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You've been unemployed for 3 years. That's who I married." The word hit harder than I expected. Unemployed. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, though never from her directly. I'd overheard it in phone calls, casual chats with friends, little throwaway comments she didn't think I'd catch. I gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's what you think I've been doing? Sitting around while you bring home the bacon?" She crossed her arms. "Well, what else would you call it? You haven't had a real job since you sold that little software company." "That little software company," I said, stepping closer, "was Orion Systems. And I didn't sell it, Emily. I merged it with Nexora and kept 90% of the stock." The color drained from her face, but she still shook her head. "That's impossible." "No," I said evenly. "It's just the truth you never bothered to ask about." I could see it happening. The gears in her mind turning, memories reshuffling themselves into a new, uncomfortable pattern. She stared past me for a moment, like she was replaying old conversations in her head. The merger announcement she'd read about as a junior analyst. The quiet months after, when I seemed between things. The sudden stability of her new employer that no one could quite explain. Her voice dropped. Orion Systems. That was a major player. The merger. It saved Nexora from bankruptcy. I nodded once. Exactly. And it was worth hundreds of millions. Is worth hundreds of millions. Because I never sold my shares. I just stepped out of the day-to-day and let Arthur run the show. She blinked, the realization settling like a weight on her shoulders. "All this time," she murmured. "While I've been climbing the ladder, you've been working for your husband," I finished for her. "Every paycheck, every promotion, every deal, under my roof, on my terms. On..." Her eyes snapped back to mine, searching for a trace of exaggeration, a tell in my expression. There wasn't one. Only the truth, and the new power dynamic she couldn't unsee. She stood there, stunned, the hotel lobby around us fading into background noise. Finally she managed, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I exhaled slowly. "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I own. I needed to know that if I lost everything tomorrow, you'd still want to be married to me." Her brow furrowed, a mix of hurt and defensiveness. "That's not fair." "It's exactly fair," I cut in. "The moment people thought I had nothing, they treated me like I was nothing, including you." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see the fight in her eyes, but also the flicker of guilt. Tonight, when Ryan called me a loser, when he mocked me for living off you, you laughed, Emily. Not awkwardly, not out of discomfort. You laughed because deep down you thought it was true. Her lips trembled, but she didn't deny it. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a dinner party insult. It was about every quiet year I'd spent in her shadow, letting her believe a story that was never real. I didn't know, she said finally, her voice thin. You didn't want to know, I replied. Every time someone joked about me being unemployed or living off your success, you just smiled and let it slide. You never once corrected them. Never once said they had no idea what they were talking about. She shook her head, almost pleading. That's not true. It is, I said, my tone sharpening. Arthur Granger came to me 15 years ago, desperate. I signed the merger papers that kept Nexora alive. I became the majority shareholder that day, and nothing about that has changed. Every paycheck you've ever brought home came from my company. Her knees seemed to soften. She reached for a marble pillar to steady herself, eyes darting like she was searching for a version of reality that didn't exist. This is insane, she whispered. No, I said quietly. This is the part where you realize you've been fighting your way up a ladder that's been leaning against my wall all along. She looked at me then, not like a husband, not like a stranger, but like someone she'd never truly seen before. Her voice dropped to barely more than a whisper. So, what happens now? I studied her for a long moment. The emerald dress she'd worn with such confidence an hour ago was wrinkled now, her hair slightly out of place. She looked smaller somehow, like the air had been let out of her. Now, I said, straightening my tie, I stop being the invisible man. I stop letting people think I'm some kind of joke, and maybe I remind everyone at Nexora exactly who's been signing their paychecks all these years. She blinked hard as if my words physically hit her. You're serious. Dead serious. I turned toward the revolving doors again. Behind me, I could feel her eyes on my back, trying to process the shift that had just shattered the balance of our marriage. She'd spent years believing she was building her own empire. Now she knew she'd been living in mine all along. And tomorrow morning, everyone else would know it too. The drive back was a blur of traffic lights and muted city noise. I barely remember turning the wheel, but I remember the tightness in my hands, the way my knuckles stayed white against the leather. Emily didn't speak. She stared out the passenger window like the skyline might offer her an escape. Every so often I'd catch her shifting, like she wanted to ask something but didn't dare. When we pulled into the driveway, she stayed in her seat for a beat longer than usual, maybe hoping I'd break the silence. I didn't. Inside, the house was exactly as we'd left it, quiet, warm, ordinary. A lie wrapped in drywall and hardwood floors. I headed straight for my office. Not the man cave she liked to joke about, but the one place in this house that still felt entirely mine. At the far bookshelf, I pressed the hidden latch. The false panel swung open, revealing the fireproof safe. I keyed in the code, pulled out a thick manila folder stamped Nexora Holdings, and spread the documents across my desk like a winning hand. Tonight had been the first move. Now, it was time to play the game. The papers smelled faintly of ink and time. 15 years of signatures, contracts, and clauses stared back at me, every line proof that I wasn't just part of Nexora's history. I was its foundation. There were the original merger documents, edges yellowed but signatures still bold. Arthur Granger's name scrawled beneath mine, a little shakier than I remembered. I could still see him that day, sweating through a $1,000 suit, desperate enough to agree to my terms without blinking. I flipped through stock certificates, trust agreements, voting rights clauses. The blind trust had done its job well. To the outside world, I was just a ghost investor, faceless, untouchable. Only Arthur and a handful of lawyers knew the truth, and they were locked down by NDAs that might as well have been written in stone. One clause in particular made me pause. The beneficial owner retains the right to assume direct control of all holdings upon written notice to the trustee and board of directors. In plain English, all I had to do was send a letter, and the curtain would fall. Tonight had been public humiliation. Tomorrow would be the start of public correction. I reached for my phone, scrolling to a name I hadn't needed in months. Marcus Trent, my lawyer, my oldest ally in the business world, the man who'd been in the room the day Arthur begged me to save Nexora. He picked up on the second ring. "Michael, this is late, even for you. Everything all right?" "I need you to prepare some documents," I said, skipping any small talk. "A full financial audit of Nexora's executive compensation, corporate credit card use, and any potential conflicts of interest. I want it airtight." There was a pause. I could hear his chair creak as he sat forward. "That's a serious move. What happened?" "Let's just call it a wake-up call. You planning to stay in the shadows or step into the light?" I looked at the spread of documents on my desk, the proof, the leverage, the history. "I think it's time everyone remembers who they're working for." Marcus gave a short, approving breath. "All right, I'll have the audit request ready by morning." "Good," I said. "And Marcus, make sure it's bulletproof. I'm not giving them a single place to hide." After we hung up, I stayed at my desk, the glow from the desk lamp pooling over the documents like a spotlight on a stage. For years I'd been content to let Arthur run Nexora as long as the dividends kept rolling in. But tonight changed that. Tonight I'd been mocked by people whose salaries existed because of me. I opened my laptop and drafted the first email. Short, precise, no room for misinterpretation. "Arthur, I need a complete breakdown of executive compensation packages, expense accounts, and any potential conflicts of interest among senior staff. Deliver by close of business tomorrow. Michael Carter." I read it twice, then hit send. A clean first shot. No theatrics, no threats. Just the kind of request that makes guilty people sweat. Leaning back, I imagined the ripple it would cause at headquarters. The hurried calls, the whispered speculation, the scrambling to hide whatever they'd been doing behind closed doors. By tomorrow, the game would already be shifting, and I'd be the one moving the pieces. The next morning, the effect was immediate. By 9 a.m. My phone was buzzing with notifications from people who didn't even know I was the one pulling the strings. Marcus texted first. "Your email hit Arthur's inbox at 6:45. He's already in full damage control mode." By 9:30, another message came through. "Ryan Brooks just got called into HR. Officially, review of conduct at corporate events. Unofficially, they're starting to dig into those contracts with his cousin's construction company." I pictured him strutting into that meeting, thinking he was untouchable. He was about to learn that the man he'd called a loser could change his career with a single phone call. At 10:15, Marcus again. "Arthur's assistant is scrambling. Word is, half the exec team is suddenly out sick. Perfect. Guilty consciences always call in sick first." I poured myself a coffee, sat back in my chair, and smiled. The board still didn't know I was coming for them. But by the end of the week, there wouldn't be a single person at Nexora who didn't know my name. By noon, my inbox pinged with a new message. Subject line, urgent. Need to discuss. I opened it. "Michael, I received your request this morning. Nexora maintains the highest standards of corporate governance, but perhaps we could discuss your concerns in a more informal setting. I'm sure we can clear up any misunderstandings." Arthur misunderstandings. That was rich. I typed my reply without hesitation. "Arthur, I'm not interested in informal discussions. I expect the documentation by 5 p.m. today, and I want the board meeting scheduled this week. No exceptions. Michael Carter." I hit send and sat back. Arthur was a master at smoothing over problems, but this wasn't a problem he could talk his way out of. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Marcus again. He's rattled. I can hear it in his calls to legal. "You've got him on the defensive already." Good. I didn't want him comfortable. I wanted him cornered. At 2:40 p.m., Marcus texted again. "Security just escorted Ryan Brooks out of the building." I stared at the message for a moment, letting it sink in. The golden boy of Emily's department, gone before lunch was even over. Reason? I typed back. HR found the paper trail. Contracts funneled to his cousin's firm. It's airtight. I pictured Ryan's face from last night, smug, flushed with champagne, convinced I was beneath him. Now he was probably packing his things into a cardboard box, trying to explain to himself how his career had imploded in under 12 hours. Arthur had moved fast on this one. Self-preservation, no doubt. Cutting loose Ryan was his way of showing me he could clean house before I did it for him. Too late. Ryan was just the first. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee gone cold. If Arthur thought tossing one pawn off the board was going to save him, He had no idea how many more pieces I was ready to take. At 3:05 p.m., my phone lit up with Emily's name. I let it ring out, waited for the voicemail. Her voice came through tight, almost sharp. "Michael, what the hell is happening over here? Ryan's been fired. People are whispering about some audit, and Arthur looks like he's about to have a breakdown. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I sent a quick text. Sounds like a typical Tuesday at the office. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Even as I hit send, I knew she wouldn't buy it, but that wasn't the point. The point was to let her sit in that uncertainty, to feel, for the first time in a long time, what it was like to not have control over the narrative. This was bigger than a bad day at work. It was the beginning of a shift so large that, by the time it was over, she wouldn't just be questioning her place at Nexora. She'd be questioning everything she thought she knew about me. By 4 p.m., Marcus called. The board meeting is set for Thursday at 2 p.m. Arthur tried to push it to next week, but the other members want answers now. They're curious about the sudden audit request, and about who's behind it. "Good," I said. "What about the documents?" "They're coming in piece by piece. And Michael, it's worse than you thought. Ryan wasn't the only one with his hand in the cookie jar. We're talking bonuses that make no sense, retreats disguised as client strategy sessions, even a couple of executives billing the company for family vacations." I let the silence stretch for a beat, feeling that cold satisfaction settle in. "They've been playing with my money," I said finally. "That ends now." Marcus's voice sharpened. "You want to ease into this, or hit them all at once?" "All at once," I replied without hesitation. "Strike while they're still off balance." When we hung up, I looked at the clock. 22 hours until that boardroom door closed behind me. 22 hours until they learned who had been holding the strings all along. At 4:37 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Another text from Emily. "Michael, please tell me you're not behind this. People are losing their jobs. I can't afford to get caught in the crossfire. My career is everything to me." There it was. Not our future, not us, just her career. I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. For years, I'd been the safety net under her climb. She never had to worry about falling because I'd made sure the ground was padded. Now she was afraid the net might vanish, and not because she cared about who was holding it. I locked the phone without replying. Instead, I called Marcus back. "Move the meeting to tomorrow if possible. I don't want to give them another day to prepare." "That's fast," he said. "Sure you don't want to build this up a little more?" "I've been building this for 15 years, I told him. "Tomorrow we finish it." Shh. Emily could worry about her career. I had a company to reclaim. By 5:02 p.m., Arthur's assistant sent the full package. Hundreds of pages, PDFs, scanned receipts, expense reports, internal memos. I opened the first file and skimmed. It didn't take long to see the rot. Executive strategy retreats at 5-star resorts. Company credit cards swiped at luxury boutiques. Golf club memberships billed as client development. It was all there, bold as daylight, like they'd forgotten rules even existed. I jotted notes in the margin of a legal pad, marking names and dates. Each line was another nail in Arthur's coffin, another reason the board wouldn't dare back him over me. One invoice in particular made me pause. $48,000 for conference accommodations in Maui. The attendee list? Arthur, his wife, and their 2 adult children. Not a single client. I leaned back in my chair, letting the disgust settle. This wasn't just corporate sloppiness. It was entitlement, the kind that festers when no one thinks they're being watched. Tomorrow they'd find out someone had been watching all along, and he owned the whole damn place. Thursday morning broke crisp and cold, the kind of air that makes everything feel sharper. I stood in front of the mirror, tightening the knot of a charcoal gray Armani suit I hadn't worn in years. It still fit perfectly. Emily had already left the house before sunrise. Said she had damage control meetings to attend. She didn't know those meetings were about me. As I slipped on my cufflinks, I thought about the first time I'd walked into Nexora's headquarters. 15 years ago, fresh off the merger, a savior in the eyes of desperate executives. This time would be different. This time, I wasn't there to save them. The drive downtown was smooth, almost eerily so. No traffic, no delays. I parked in the underground garage, stepped out into the concrete echo chamber, and found Marcus waiting near the elevators. Navy suit, polished briefcase, that calm, measured smile he wore before dismantling someone's career. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready for 15 years, I said. The elevator doors slid shut. The ride-up was silent except for the hum of the cables and the steady beat of my own pulse. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, Arthur was already there, pacing like a man waiting for a verdict. The moment he saw me, his face tightened into something halfway between a smile and a wince. "Michael," he said, extending a damp palm, "it's been too long." I shook his hand, noting the clamminess. "You look well, Arthur, though I'm guessing you didn't sleep much." He chuckled awkwardly. "Well, you know how these things are. Just trying to make sure the board's comfortable with my company," I cut in. "Let's not dance around it. That's why I'm here." Before he could respond, the boardroom doors opened. 5 members sat waiting, some flipping through papers, others eyeing me with thinly veiled curiosity. Arthur cleared his throat. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Michael Carter." For a moment there was only polite confusion. Then Patricia Hensley, the only woman on the board, froze mid-page turn. "Michael Carter, as in Orion Systems?" I took my seat at the head of the table. "The very same," I said. "Let's get started." I opened my briefcase and began sliding documents across the polished mahogany table. Executive compensation reports, expense account summaries, proof of Ryan's nepotism and Arthur's misuse of company funds. "This," I said evenly, "is what I've been paying for. Family vacations on the company dime, golf memberships labeled as client development, contracts steered to friends and relatives, and a corporate culture where mocking people passes as leadership." Arthur shifted in his seat. "Michael, if there have been irregularities, we can address them through proper channels." "The proper channel," I interrupted, "is me, standing here, now." I pulled out one final sheet, the notice Marcus had prepared. "Effective immediately. I'm exercising my rights as majority shareholder to assume direct operational control of Nexora. Arthur, your resignation is accepted. Security will escort you out before the end of the day." The room erupted in murmurs, but no one challenged me, not one. They knew the paper in my hand was more than a threat. It was law. Arthur's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, the balance of power in that room tilted exactly where it belonged. Arthur's mouth opened, then closed again. Whatever speech he'd prepared died before it reached his lips. He pushed his chair back, the scrape against the floor loud in the tense room. Patricia was the first to speak. "Michael, if you're taking control, who do you intend to put in the CEO seat?" I didn't hesitate. "Sophia Lee, Senior Engineering Director. She's built more of this company's real value in the last 5 years than the entire executive floor combined." One of the older board members frowned. "She's young." "She's competent," I said flatly, "and that's the only qualification that matters now." Arthur muttered something under his breath as he stood, but I didn't bother asking what. Security was already waiting at the door. As they let him out, I turned back to the table. "This isn't just a change in leadership. It's a reset. No more waste, no more cronyism. From this day forward, we build something worth owning again." A few members nodded reluctantly, others with something closer to relief. The game had changed, and they knew it. When the meeting adjourned, the board members filtered out in hushed pairs, leaving only Patricia behind. She lingered near the doorway, watching me gather the stack of documents back into my briefcase. "You're making the right call with Sophia," she said finally. "But you've just made a lot of enemies in one afternoon." I looked up. "Wouldn't be the first time." She stepped closer. "Arthur's loyalists won't go quietly. They'll try to undermine you, slow walk changes, maybe even push for a buyout if they think you'll take the money and walk away." I snapped the case shut. "Let them try. This isn't about a payout. It's about cleaning house." Patricia studied me for a long moment, then extended her hand. "I want in. Whatever you're planning next, I can help." It was a calculated move, and she knew I could see that. Still, an ally on the inside was worth more than a dozen outside consultants. I shook her hand. "Then you'd better be ready. This company's about to look very different, very fast." She smiled faintly. That's exactly what I'm counting on. After Patricia left, I didn't head straight for the elevator. Instead, I walked the length of the executive floor, past the glass-walled offices that had once seemed so untouchable. Most doors were shut, blinds drawn, but I could feel eyes tracking me through the slats, whispers rising as I passed. Word had traveled fast. Arthur was out, and the nobody husband from last night's gala now owned the floor. I stopped outside Sophia Lee's office. She was hunched over a CAD drawing, headphones around her neck, hair pulled back in a loose bun. She looked up, startled. "Mr. Carter? I didn't know you were—" "Michael," I corrected. "Can we talk?" She gestured to a chair, clearly unsure why the majority shareholder was standing in her doorway. I sat, leaning forward. "How would you feel about running this company?" Her pen slipped from her hand. "You're joking." "Not even a little." Her brow furrowed. "Arthur would never—" "Arthur's gone," I said. "And I need someone who knows how this place actually works." In that moment, I saw the spark, the same fire I'd had when I built Orion. She didn't say yes yet, but she would. Sophia leaned back in her chair, studying me like she was trying to decide if this was a test. "I'm an engineer, Michael. I design systems. I solve problems. I'm not—" She gestured vaguely toward the corner office down the hall. That, I said, is exactly the problem. Too many people here have been playing executive while the real work gets done 2 floors down. You know the product, you know the people, and you're not afraid to tell the truth. That's what this company needs. She hesitated, chewing on her bottom lip. If I say yes, what happens to Arthur's people? They can adapt or they can leave, I replied without blinking. I'm not here to protect egos. I'm here to protect the company. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then slowly she nodded. I'll think about it. That's all I ask, I said, standing. But don't take too long. Change waits for no one. As I left her office, I knew I'd planted the seed. And once an idea like that takes root in someone with her drive, it's only a matter of time before it grows. The hallway outside Sophia's office felt different now, charged. I caught fragments of conversations as I walked past open doors. Did you hear? Arthur's gone. The guy from the gala? That's her husband? No, not just her husband. He owns the place. I kept my pace steady, offering nothing more than a polite nod to anyone who made eye contact. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Every rumor only tightened my grip on the narrative. Near the elevator, I passed 2 executives I recognized from Arthur's inner circle. They stopped mid-sentence when they saw me. One forced a smile. The other couldn't even manage that. "Gentlemen," I said lightly, pressing the elevator button. They murmured a greeting, and I could feel their eyes boring into my back as the doors slid shut. Fear was a powerful motivator, and right now, it was working in my favor. By the time I stepped out into the lobby, I knew one thing for certain. The old guard was already scrambling, and they didn't yet realize that every move they made now, I'd be watching. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut sharp lines across the pavement. I slipped into the back of the town car Marcus had arranged, the leather still warm from the heat. As we pulled into traffic, my phone lit up. Emily again. This time I answered. "Finally," she said, her voice clipped. "Do you have any idea what you've done today?" "Plenty," I replied. "Arthur's gone. His little empire of waste and favors is next. You humiliated him in front of the board, and now everyone's saying Sophia Lee is taking his place. Do you know how that looks?" "Yes," I said evenly. "It looks like the company's getting a leader who actually knows what she's doing." There was a pause, then a sharp exhale. "You've put me in an impossible position, Michael. Half my department owes their jobs to Arthur." "Then they'd better learn to work without him," I said. Silence on the other end. Not anger this time, something colder. "You're changing the rules," she said finally. "No," I answered, watching the city blur past the window. "I'm just taking back the game." Emily's voice hardened. "If you think I'm going to stand by while you tear apart everything I've built," I cut her off. "Everything you've built? Emily, the ground you've been building on has been mine since the day we met. You've been expanding a house without realizing I own the land." That's not fair, she shot back. It's the truth, I said. And here's another truth. You need to decide which side of this you're on, because after today, there's no middle ground. I could hear her breathing on the line, sharp and uneven. You're forcing me into a corner. No, I replied, my tone flat. I'm just showing you the corners that have always been there. You've got until the board meets again to choose. She didn't answer. The call ended with a hollow click, leaving only the low hum of the car's engine. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The lines had been drawn, clear, unmovable. And soon, everyone at Nexora would have to choose where they stood. Back at my office, Marcus was already waiting. 2 steaming coffees on the table and a laptop open to a spreadsheet that looked like it could sink a ship. Arthur's network is weaker than we thought, he said, swiveling the screen toward me. Half of his closest allies are already reaching out to the board, trying to clarify their loyalties. I smirked. Translation: they're trying to save themselves. Exactly. And if we push now, we can flip most of them before week's end. I scanned the list. Names, positions, ties to Arthur. Some were obvious trouble. Others were opportunists who'd cling to whoever looked stronger. Start with the opportunists, I said. They're the easiest to sway, and they'll send a message to the rest. Marcus nodded. And Sophia? She's thinking it over, I said. But when she steps in, I want half the building already in her corner. We clinked coffee cups like generals toasting before a battle. This wasn't just about removing Arthur anymore. It was about reshaping Nexora from the ground up, and I was building the army to do it. By the next morning, the cracks were widening. Emails started trickling in, subtle at first, then bolder. Executives who'd barely acknowledged me before were suddenly excited to align with the new vision. One even attached a confidential memo detailing Arthur's stalled projects and budget overruns. A peace offering. Marcus forwarded me another note from a senior VP I remembered seeing at Emily's table during the gala. Michael, I want you to know I've always respected your role here, even if it wasn't public. I'd be happy to discuss how my team can support your leadership going forward. I knew exactly what that meant. Self-preservation. Still, every defection was another brick out of Arthur's old fortress. By noon, I had a list of 10 key players who'd quietly pledged themselves to me, and I hadn't even raised my voice. Loyalty in this place was like water. It flowed to the deepest pocket. And for the first time in years, everyone was remembering exactly who held the reservoir. It was just after 3 p.m. when my office door opened without a knock. Emily stepped in, heels clicking on the hardwood, a storm in her eyes. "You're dismantling everything," she said, not bothering with hello. "Do you have any idea how many people you've scared into calling me today?" I leaned back in my chair. Good. Fear tends to get people's attention. This isn't a game, Michael. You're making enemies faster than you can count. I'm making room, I corrected. The people who stay will be the ones who actually deserve to be here. She crossed her arms, studying me like I was someone she didn't quite recognize. And what about me? Where do I fit in your new empire? I let the silence hang just long enough for her to feel it. That depends on you. You can work with me, or you can stand in my way, but you can't do both. Her jaw tightened. You really think you can run this place without me? I gave a faint smile. I've been doing it for 15 years without you even realizing it. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Then she turned on her heel and walked out. No goodbyes. The door clicked shut behind her, but I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the grain of the wood, listening to the echo of her heels fade down the hallway. Marcus stepped in a moment later, a folder in hand. You're not going to like this, he said, dropping it on my desk. Inside was a summary of an internal meeting Emily had just left, her department heads huddled behind closed doors for nearly 2 hours. The notes were vague, but the implication was clear. She was gauging support. She's testing the waters, Marcus said, seeing if she can build her own block before you cement control. I closed the folder slowly. Then we move faster. We're already moving fast. Not fast enough, I replied. By the time she realizes what side the tide's on, I want the current too strong for her to swim against. Marcus gave a short nod. I'll make the calls. The tide was turning all right. The question was whether Emily planned to ride it or drown in it. By nightfall, my plan was in motion. Marcus had already reached out to the board's compliance committee, fast-tracking policy changes I'd been holding in reserve. First, all executive contracts would now require quarterly performance reviews tied directly to measurable results. Second, expense accounts would be frozen pending audit clearance. Third, and most important, any leadership appointment, including department heads, would need my written approval as majority shareholder. In one sweep, I'd cut off Arthur's old loyalists from their perks, clipped their spending wings, and locked every promotion track behind my signature. Marcus looked up from his laptop. Once this hits, anyone still thinking about siding with Emily will think twice. She won't be able to offer them anything you can't take away. Good, I said, signing the last page. Let's make sure the gates are shut before the storm hits. Because Emily was smart. She'd push back hard once she realized the walls were closing in. But by then, I intended for there to be no way out. The storm came sooner than I expected. By 10 a.m. the next morning, Marcus walked into my office holding a printout. She's already making moves. The document was a proposal, drafted by Emily, co-signed by 3 senior managers, arguing for the creation of an independent strategic oversight committee. In plain English, it was a power grab, a way to box me in by giving operational authority to a panel that could overrule the CEO and me. She's trying to build a firewall, Marcus said. I skimmed the list of proposed committee members. 2 of them were former Arthur loyalists. The third was a safe, quiet type, exactly the kind of person Emily could sway behind closed doors. I set the paper down. How fast can we kill it? Faster than she can sell it, if we move now. Then move, I said. For 15 years, I'd stayed out of the political games inside Nexora. Now, I was learning the rules fast and playing to win. Marcus was already dialing before he left my office. By noon, I had 3 board members on the line for an unscheduled check-in. I didn't waste time. Emily's proposal isn't oversight, it's obstruction. You put that committee in place, and all you've done is hand the company back to the same people who let Arthur run wild. Patricia spoke first. I've seen the draft. She's framing it as a safeguard against unilateral decisions. That's exactly what it is, I said. A safeguard against me cleaning up the mess. And the mess is why Nexora's been stagnating for years. The silence told me they were thinking it over. Then one of the older members cleared his throat. If we vote this down now, we'll need an alternative to show we're not ignoring governance. I'll give you one, I said. A lean 3-person advisory group, Patricia, Marcus, and Sophia Lee. No votes, purely consultative. Enough to look responsible without handcuffing the company. By 3 p.m., the committee proposal was dead. Emily had taken her first shot, and I'd sent it right back, clean through the center. That evening, I sent Emily a short email. I heard about your proposal. It didn't pass. If you want influence in this company, earn it the way everyone else will have to, by producing results. No threats, no lectures. Just a quiet reminder that her old playbook wouldn't work anymore. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. But Marcus texted me an hour later. She's rattled. Sources say she tore into her managers after the vote failed. Good. Rattled people make mistakes. The truth was, I wasn't trying to crush her outright. Not yet. I just wanted her to understand that every move she made from here on out would be in my shadow. And if she couldn't work with that reality, then she'd eventually work her way right out of Nexora. The next morning, Sophia showed up at my office unannounced. No knock, just the soft click of the door and the sharp scent of coffee she'd clearly skipped drinking. I've made my decision, she said, stepping inside. I'll take the CEO role. I gestured to the chair across from me. What changed your mind? You were right, she said simply. This place is run by people who think leadership is a title, not a responsibility. I can't watch it rot from the inside anymore. A small smile tugged at my mouth. Then we start immediately. Her brow arched. Arthur's allies won't like it. They don't have to like it, I said. They just have to follow your lead, or leave. I slid a folder across the desk. Inside was the official appointment letter, already signed and dated. "I knew you'd say yes," I added. Sophia glanced at the paper, then back at me. "Then let's go make some enemies." It wasn't bravado. It was the sound of the tide turning in my favor, permanently. By noon, the official email went out to the entire company. Effective immediately, Sophia Lee has been appointed Chief Executive Officer of Nexora. Her leadership, technical expertise, and dedication to results represent the future of this company. Michael Carter, majority shareholder. I stood with Sophia in the lobby as the news spread. Some employees looked relieved, others stunned. A few of Arthur's holdouts avoided making eye contact altogether. Patricia joined us, her tone dry. "Well, you've certainly stirred the pot. Phones upstairs haven't stopped ringing." "Good," I said. "It means they're paying attention." Sophia leaned closer, keeping her voice low. "Emily's already sent me a meeting request to discuss departmental priorities." I didn't even have to think. "Decline it. Tell her all department priorities go through me until further notice." She smirked faintly. "You really don't do half measures, do you?" "No," I said, watching the ripples of the announcement move through the crowd. "Half measures are how we got here in the first place." It didn't take long. By 2 p.m., Emily was in my doorway, closing it hard enough to make the blinds tremble. "You bypassed me," she said, voice low but sharp. "Announcing a CEO without even talking to me?" I met her glare without flinching. "You're head of sales, Emily, not head of the company." Her laugh was bitter. "Sales is the reason this company has revenue to begin with." "And engineering is the reason you have something to sell," I countered. "Sophia built the backbone of this place while you were chasing quarterly targets." She crossed her arms. "You think she can run Nexora without the relationships I've built? Without my team? I think she can run Nexora better without the baggage you've been dragging in from Arthur's old network," I said evenly. Her eyes narrowed. "So this is it? You're cutting me out?" "No," I said, leaning forward. "I'm giving you a choice. Adapt to the new order, or keep fighting me until there's nothing left for you to fight for." For a moment she said nothing. Then she turned and left, the click of her heels sharper than usual, like every step was holding back something she wasn't ready to say. The next morning, Sophia and I met in the small glass-walled conference room on the top floor, neutral ground where Arthur used to hold his private strategy sessions. On the table between us sat a short list of names. "These are the people I trust," Sophia said. "They're competent, loyal to the work, not the politics." I scanned the list. Project leads, senior engineers, a finance manager I vaguely remembered approving for promotion years ago. "Half of these aren't even on the executive floor," I noted. "That's why they're good," she said. "They've been getting things done while the so-called leaders were playing golf." I nodded. "Fine. We bring them in quietly. No titles yet, just influence. They start shaping decisions from the inside out." Sophia smirked. "Underground leadership. I like it." "This company doesn't need another top-heavy restructure," I said. "It needs a spine. We build that first. Then we decide who gets to wear the suits." Outside the glass, I could see a few of Arthur's old allies watching us, whispering, "Good. Let them wonder what we were planning." By the time they figured it out, it would already be too late. By the end of the week, we had our first move for the new team. A high-value client had complained about repeated delivery delays, something Arthur's leadership had brushed off for months. I called in 3 department heads, 2 from Sophia's list, and 1 who'd been an open Arthur supporter. I laid the problem on the table. "Whoever solves this by Monday earns my personal sign-off for expanded budget next quarter." The 2 Sophia-backed managers dove in immediately, trading ideas and pulling up data. The Arthur loyalists sat back, arms crossed, waiting for someone else to make the first move. By the next morning, Sophia's people had already sketched out a lean fix that would cut delivery times by 30%. The loyalist hadn't even sent a follow-up email. When Monday came, I approved the budget increase, loudly, in front of the entire operations meeting. It wasn't just about rewarding results. It was about showing the building exactly what kind of loyalty I valued now. And just like that, a few more chairs around Arthur's old table went noticeably empty. By midweek, I started noticing a shift in the way people treated Emily. In the cafeteria, conversations she joined seemed to wrap up faster. In the halls, casual smiles were replaced with polite nods. Marcus confirmed what I suspected. Your loyalty test worked. People are reading the room. They know Sophia's the future, and they don't want to be seen as clinging to the past. Or to her. It wasn't that Emily was being openly shunned, at least not yet, but the subtle distancing was there, the kind that comes when people sense someone's influence slipping. That evening, I caught sight of her in the lobby, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. She turned away the moment she noticed me watching. I didn't approach. Whatever she was plotting, it wouldn't matter unless she could find enough people willing to back her. And every day, that pool was shrinking. Not because I'd attacked her directly, but because I'd made sure the ground beneath her was quietly disappearing. 2 days later, Marcus walked into my office with a knowing look. "She's trying to go around you," he said, dropping a manila envelope on my desk. Inside were photocopies of emails, Emily reaching out to a private equity firm she'd dealt with years ago, pitching them on a strategic acquisition of Nexora's core assets. "She's framing it as a win-win," Marcus continued. "They get the tech, she gets a seat at the new table, and you get, well, a payout you didn't ask for." I read the emails twice, then set them down carefully. She's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. "Want me to shut it down?" "Not yet," I said. "Let it play just long enough for her to think she's gaining traction. Then we pull the rug." Marcus grinned. "And when the firm finds out she can't deliver? They'll drop her, and everyone she's been whispering to will see her for exactly what she is, a liability. Emily wanted to play high-stakes games in my arena. Fine. But she'd forgotten one thing. I built the arena." That afternoon, I called Patricia into my office. She closed the door behind her, a curious glint in her eyes. "I need you to leak something," I said. Her eyebrow arched. "Subtle or explosive?" "Subtle," I replied. "A quiet heads up to your contact at Coworker Capital, the same firm Emily's been talking to. Let them know that any asset transfer at Nexora requires my written approval as majority shareholder, and that I have no plans to sell." Patricia's smile was slow and deliberate. "So when Emily pitches her deal, they'll already know she can't deliver," I finished. "And I want them to make her think they're still interested. Let her keep working the angle until she's in too deep to pull back gracefully." Patricia nodded. "Consider it done." When she left, I leaned back in my chair. Emily thought she was maneuvering in the shadows, but every step she took was inside a maze I'd built. And when she reached the center, she'd find there was only one way out. Through me. By the end of the week, the bait was set. Patricia confirmed that Coworker Capital had taken the call with Emily, playing it smooth, asking about timelines and valuation like they were genuinely considering her offer. Marcus smirked when he told me. "She's convinced they're on board, already talking about preliminary terms to a couple of her managers." Perfect. The deeper she sold this dream, the harder it would hit when it collapsed. I imagined her pacing in her office, rehearsing her pitch, believing she was just days away from outmaneuvering me. And all the while, every word she spoke was tightening the noose. By Monday, Coworker would quietly let her know the deal was on hold pending shareholder approval. And she'd have to explain to her inner circle why the plan she'd been pushing with such confidence had suddenly gone cold. False hope was a dangerous thing. It made the fall not just painful, but humiliating. Monday morning, Marcus walked into my office holding his phone like it was a trophy. "She just got the call," he said. I didn't have to ask who. According to his source, Coworker's rep had been polite, even warm, but the message was blunt. "Without majority shareholder consent, we can't proceed. Perhaps in the future." Emily had apparently gone silent for a long beat before thanking them and hanging up. An hour later, 3 of her closest managers requested private meetings with Sophia to discuss aligning priorities. "She's bleeding support fast," Marcus said. "By the end of the week, she'll be isolated." I nodded, but I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't just about watching her plan collapse. It was about making sure everyone understood why it had failed. "Get word out quietly," I said. Make sure the right people know she tried to sell what she didn't own. Marcus's grin returned. Reputation kill shot. Got it. Emily wanted to play power games. Now she'd learned the first rule. Power isn't what you grab, it's what you can keep. By Tuesday, the ripple effects were everywhere. In the cafeteria, I caught snippets of conversations, her name spoken in hushed tones, followed by quick glances to make sure she wasn't nearby. 2 team leads she'd counted on for years were suddenly too busy to attend her strategy sessions. Patricia slipped into my office mid-morning. She's trying to act unaffected, but it's paper thin. People can smell the blood in the water. Sophia joined us a moment later, holding a printout. One of Emily's managers just sent this to me by mistake. It's a project transition plan. Looks like they're moving certain client accounts out of her department already. I glanced over the list. Big names. Ones she'd fought hard to land. Let it happen, I said. The more she loses, the clearer it is to everyone that the center of gravity has shifted. In corporate war, aftershocks were sometimes more destructive than the initial strike, and Emily was standing in the middle of them with no cover. That afternoon, Emily requested a one-on-one. No subject line, no explanation, just a calendar invite for 5 p.m. in one of the smaller conference rooms. When I walked in, she was already there, arms folded, staring out the window at the fading skyline. I suppose congratulations are in order, she said without turning. You've managed to turn half the building against me without ever saying my name. I took a seat. You managed that yourself. I just made sure people saw it. She finally looked at me. There was no anger in her eyes now, just a weary sharpness. You think you've won, Michael, but you've made enemies you don't even know about yet. Then they'll make the same mistake you did, I said evenly. They'll underestimate who they're dealing with. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm not going to grovel, but I'll adapt. You've made it clear I don't have a choice. That's the smartest thing you've said in weeks, I replied. Emily nodded once, curt and controlled, before walking past me toward the door. And for the first time, I wasn't entirely sure if she was retreating or regrouping. The morning after our meeting, I called Sophia and Marcus into my office. Emily says she'll adapt, I told them, but I'm not betting the company on her word. We locked this structure down. Sophia leaned forward. Meaning? Every critical account, every major client relationship, transfer oversight to people we trust. Emily can keep her title, but not the levers. Marcus grinned. A figurehead with no buttons to push. I like it. By noon, the plan was moving. Key accounts were reassigned under the banner of strategic optimization, and financial sign-offs were rerouted through Sophia's new operations team. From the outside, it looked like routine restructuring. From the inside, it was fortifying the castle walls before anyone realized there was a siege. By the end of the week, Emily would still have her corner office and her department nameplate. But the machinery that gave them weight would be running somewhere else entirely. By Friday afternoon, the shift was undeniable. Sophia's calendar was booked solid with meetings that used to go through Emily. Department heads were bringing their proposals directly to her or to me, bypassing the old chain of command without hesitation. In the cafeteria, the subtle glances toward Emily had changed. They weren't wary anymore. They were dismissive. She was still physically present, but in the company's mind, she'd already been moved to the sidelines. Marcus stopped by my office with the week's summary. Support for your leadership is up across every major team. Even the old Arthur loyalists are falling in line. They've realized you're not just a passing storm. I looked out the window at the city skyline, the same view Arthur once lorded over. Good, because this isn't a storm. Marcus tilted his head. Then what is it? I smiled faintly. It's the new climate. Nexora's center of gravity had shifted for good, and I was standing at the exact point where everything now revolved. The following Monday, I stood in the same boardroom where it had all started. Different faces now, fewer smug smiles, more attentive eyes. Sophia at my right, Patricia at my left, Marcus leaning against the wall like a sentry. I laid my hands on the table. 6 weeks ago, this company was rotting from the top down. Nepotism, waste, leadership that served itself instead of the mission. That's over. We've cut the dead weight. We've rebuilt the spine. And starting today, Nexora moves forward with one goal: results. No applause, no back-patting. Just quiet, focused agreement. Exactly how I wanted it. When the meeting adjourned, I lingered a moment, looking at the empty chair at the far end of the table, Arthur's old seat. Last night at the gala, he'd tried to humiliate me in front of everyone. Today, he wasn't even a footnote. As I stepped out into the hallway, Sophia caught my arm. Feels different now, doesn't it? I glanced around at the hum of purposeful work, the absence of whispered politics. It feels mine. And it was. Every move, every counter, every strike had led here. Not just to take back what was mine, but to make sure no one would ever mistake me for the man in the shadows again.